Reading from the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, Chapter 1, Volume 1, Chapter 1, Text 24 and 25. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ekadā tīrtha-mūrdhanye, prayāge muni-puṅgavāḥ, māghe prātaḥ kṛta-snānāḥ, śrī-mādhava-samīpataḥ, upaviṣṭā mudāviṣṭā, manyamānāḥ, kṛtārthatām, Krishna-kasya dayito, sīti, ślāghante parasparam. Once a group of exalted sages were at Prayāga, the best of pilgrimage sites, during the month of Māgha. The sages had taken their bath and were happily seated before the Deity of Śrī Mādhava, feeling satisfied as if all their goals in life had been fulfilled. They were praising one another, saying, "You are the recipient of Lord Kṛṣṇa's mercy." Purport: these sages at Prayāga were humble devotees of Krishna. Each of them disliked hearing himself praised, and was thus trying to divert the praise to someone else. Appreciative of one another's good qualities, they could honestly tell one another, "You are the Lord's dearmost devotee." When Vaishnavas are friendly to one another like this, their community prospers. Om Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Taksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishnam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam. Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So greetings from Massachusetts. It's about 25 minutes from the Super Soul Farm. I went last night for the premiere of a film that was made. It was wonderful. I think it was called Divine something, but it was about Raghunath in a way. And there was just this nice guy, Tom, that he was just in the neighborhood. And, you know, it's amazing how people come to Krishna consciousness. Seemed like kind of a simple Italian guy, and his wife was an accountant. And they went on Raghunath's tour. So it was called Something Divine. And he said, "I'm going to make a film." He never made a film before. He said, "I'm going to make a film." So I thought, okay, the guy must have some extra money. Let him make a film. You know, what's the harm? I mean, I didn't have any authority like that, but that's what I was thinking. But it was fantastic what he did. He had the narrative of about 4 or 5 people on Raghunath's tour, including Paramananda. And what it did is it paralleled the Lalita Paramananda was some of the people interviewed. Fabio, this guy from Italy who has his own story. Joe Chirini, who has a big carpet store in New York City. I wrote an article too about his visit in Vrindavan. And some other people, I don't remember all of them. And it was so expertly done, it paralleled the hardcore scene with India. And actually, like Raghunath's the same. It's just like a different music. You know, on the hardcore show, he's screaming some lyrics that they're spiritual. And then when you get the scenes in Vrindavan and the different place they visit with the Indians kind of dancing wildly, it was such an uncanny parallel. And in a very subtle way, you really got the sense of, the pilgrimage and the transformation of the people. And so that was fun. So that was like a late night out for me. Let me give you a little overview of this incredible book, Bhāgavatāmṛta, Bṛhad, great, Bhāgavatāmṛta, the essence, the nectar of the Bhagavatam. Amrita is the nectar, and sometimes it's compared to the cream, like the best part of something. And it's really what it's meant to be is the best part of the Bhagavatam, which is the love of Krishna for the gopis. And it begins, my Monday morning greetings is actually, how can you see the film? I'll find out for you. But you'd really love it. But it begins, and I wrote my Monday morning greetings about this, with Sanatana Goswami having this incredible, impossible task to explain. I said, Parama Disha Antim, the end, supreme level of transcendence. It's practical, and it's so difficult because that level of transcendence is something that Krishna himself can't even fathom. That he has to become his devotee to actually experience it. So naturally, what Sanatana Goswami does, and this became a very clear theme in the verses, that humility attracts mercy. Humility attracts mercy, and prayer invokes humility. And therefore, before you do any task that has to really describe Krishna, which is really beyond your cognitive capacity to dominate, Tesham Satidhyuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam Dadami Bodhi. It has to be kind of given. You have to put yourself in a humble state of mind with prayer. And then he concludes the prayers by saying, Chaitanya Deve, that by Chaitanya Deve, by the Lord Chaitanya, or Chaitanya, the Lord in the heart. Chaitanya is also the life force. I will now be able to explain to you this concept, an idea, an experience. In a very systematic way, he's going to explain it too, not jump to the highest thing. But I'm going to be able to do it by their mercy. It's by mercy. We are instruments. Instruments have value, but they need an agent to use them. So we should look at it that way. We have a karmic ability, and everyone has, from our past life and what we're accrued in this life, a particular nature. And to be purified of that nature, we have to allow ourselves to be used by Krishna. Sarvapadi vinir muktam tatparatvaina nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevana bhakta uttamam. We have to sarvapadi vinir muktam. We have to give up the material designation. In other words, we have the material designation, and the way we give it up is like Arjuna, is to use it for Krishna rather than oneself. And by doing that, it changes our chitta. The whole process of Krishna consciousness is changing the chitta. The chitta is not just the mana, it's the manas, the intelligence, the false ego. Right now we have something that's not us, and it's impelling us to act antithetical to the soul. So we have to change that. And that's the process of sadhana bhakti, and that's the process of surrendering to Guru. We change that with the first conception that instead of acting simply by my impulses, I'm going to be acting with my intelligence that is based on Shastra, which shows me how to use the mind according to where I am, to put impressions in the consciousness that will change my chitta, my total antakaranam, inner instrument. It will change it, of course, based on the holy name, which is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. I will change that. And then when we come to a certain point in our spiritual life, and this should be our objective. Our objective should be to understand our relationship with Krishna. It doesn't manifest fully in who I am, but at least our relationship with Krishna. First, that we have a relationship with Krishna. Madan Mohan, that we have to control our lust, and then that just means sex life, but the impulses of the senses. And ultimately purify that heart of all the impressions and consciousness that says, I am not a devotee of God, I am the enjoyer and controller, and I'm this particular type of enjoyer and controller. So we have to change that, and eventually we come to the point where we have some sense, what I am is I'm a resident of Vrindavan, and who we are, and eventually then starting to hear and aspire to serve Krishna as those people have. And as that does, our consciousness changes more and more. So it's not an artificial thing, but he's going to give the process to actually purify oneself. So he says, well, how does he do it? Well, Chaitanya Deva, by the mercy of the Lord in the heart and Lord Chaitanya, by the mercy of the super soul and the external manifestation of the super soul, which is Guru and the advanced Vaishnavas, the super soul is giving direction, wants to give direction, how to change this material conception and how to come back to Krishna. And it manifests as Guru, who represents Shastra, which is giving that message on how to do it. And as his service, Bhagavad Bhakti Shastranam Ayam Sarasya Sangraha, I collected the essence of Bhagavad Bhakti Shastra. He's collected the essence. And now he wants to give the essence of Bhagavad Bhakti Shastra through that realization he has. And again, if the historical circumstance is that he's met Lord Chaitanya, became inspired by Lord Chaitanya, was instructed by Lord Chaitanya, and his instruction was to do this, to make this accessible. God's mission to increase the love of him in a very personal way in one of the relationships that you have with him, which is very intimate, spontaneous, and forceful. It's why Krishna came. That's why he comes again as Lord Chaitanya, to give this very, very special thing. And now Sanatana Goswami has the mission to explain it to us and to guide us. I always quote that famous verse, Anarpita, never before given, Chirim Chirat, for a long time. Samarpyatam unatoj vala rasam, the brilliant flavor of devotion, swabhakti swayam, of this intimate devotion to myself. So he begins to narrate this story, which is going to exemplify Bhagavad Bhakti Shastranam Ayam Sarasa Sangraha, the collection of the essence of the Bhakti Shastras. So as we mentioned before, it begins with Maharaj's grandson, Janamejaya. He's just heard the Mahabharata from Jaimini Rishi, his guru, and who's not an ordinary soul. Vyasadeva, 4 Vedas, the main Veda, the Sama Veda, that purifies you to this platform of devotion, he entrusted to Jaimini Rishi. So he hears this Mahabharata and he's stunned, because the Mahabharata by Vasat Payana, the common Mahabharata we heard, the one he hears, it's nothing like this at all. And it's interesting. The same thing can be experienced in different ways. I just read that example of milk. If each sense was independent, one would see something, one would hear something, one would taste something, one would smell something, one would feel something. It's all the same object from a different perspective. So Shastra is like that according to the audience one is speaking to. And what's the intent of your audience? According to the intent of your audience, you shape something in a particular way. So somehow or other, the initial Mahabharata is for the common people, and it doesn't present Krishna in the prominent role. It's just like in the Vedas, there are impersonal tendencies, because the first concept of spiritual life is you have to get rid of the false ego, the conception that I am the body and I'm the controller and I'm the enjoyer. But because envy is so much the root, it's such a hard thing to give up. We don't even realize how much we are ruled by envy, how much we find competitors in the world and somehow don't root for them because it compromises our enjoyment and control, and especially our sense of superiority. Ichadvesa samutena dvandva mohena. I am born into this material world, overcome with the dualities of desire and hate. So because of that envy, transcendence sometimes has to be presented as impersonal, because the personal conception of God is the ultimate threat to the conception of false ego and superiority. The impersonal conception is not as much of a threat. So same thing with the Mahabharata. Krishna, it's not impersonal, but it's not presenting Krishna's divinity. And then the second Mahabharata, which is basically looking at the history of the lineage of the kings and the Bharat king, and in that lineage, it presents that history, how prominent Krishna actually is in terms of, he makes it into the Mahabharata as the Bhagavad Gita, the first Bhagavad, but this is much more. It's more like the Bhagavatam. So Janamejaya, he says, I've never heard something so relishable. Then he said, Madhuram Samapye, and now with something sweet. It's a poetic term, and with something sweet. And he said, just like the Harivamsa is a kila, a short synopsis and commentary of his Mahabharata, what is the kila for this Mahabharata? And then he begins to narrate the story of Maharaj Parikshit in the last days of his life. He's just heard the Bhagavatam. The snake bird has not come yet, but he's heard the Bhagavatam. And two things happen. All his desires are fulfilled, and all material conceptions are finished. Samyak praniyate male, completely. Samyak praniyate male, without any male, any dirt, any conception. He is ready. We know how hard it is sometimes to meditate when we have so many other things that we like, so many other things on our mind. It becomes very difficult to meditate. But now he has the faith, the trust, by the experience of hearing the nectar of the Bhagavatam, which fixed up the intellect, and more important than that, satisfied the heart and created these incredible desires and impressions to want Krishna. And knowing that the time has come, this is the time where there should be nothing else on the mind. And he tells that. And then his mother comes. And he consoles her, Matri Vatsala, out of affection, actually, which is interesting. He gave up everything. He still had affection for his mother. And then his mother, really, because she was such a great devotee, she said, please tell me something. She asked for, give me a synopsis of the nectar that you just heard. And he said, I can't resist this, even though at the time of death, one should leave everything and just focus their mind and should remain silent. I can't resist this because your question was so delightful. And he begins now to narrate the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, which is the essence of the Bhagavatam. So it begins in a very interesting place. And it begins with sages that are completely satisfied in heart, exalted sages, because they're in the best of pilgrimage sites, Prayāga, the Saraswati, the Jamuna, the Ganga, the very best. And it's during the month of Māgha. Of months, I have the month of Māgha, I think it's a Gita, or the winter. And then the sages, they had taken their bath. There's nothing that elevates the consciousness like a divya snan, a divine bath. You bathe in that holy river, and the fall, you come out, and the false ego, the water's falling down. Your false ego is in a puddle on the floor. You're so satisfied. When you're satisfied in heart, you don't want to enjoy and control, because you have something higher than enjoyment and control. And that's the soul. And that's the consciousness, the soul, the love, the devotion. And in that thing, they're before the deity. And they're feeling they're looking at the deity and they're feeling the energy of the deity. They're feeling the energy of the deity. And what is that energy? It's Sambandha, it's the connection, it's Krishna as manifest. So in that pure consciousness, they're feeling that, they're looking at the deity, but they're loving the deity and they're feeling the love of Krishna back. And they feel all the goals of our life have now been satisfied. It can't get better than this. And that's our goal. Our goal is to have that feeling in heart relationship with Krishna and just feel like that's the beauty of bhakti. The beauty of bhakti is what you want more than anything else you can get. The tragedy of enjoyment and control is you never can get that. Because the mechanism of enjoyment and control is an illusion and temporary. And it's always threatened with destruction. And because it doesn't really satisfy the heart, you always want more of it. You never become satisfied. Devotee can become they never become satiated by bhakti. They never get bored of it. They never feel I'm completely, but material enjoyment, I've had this. Okay, so what? What's next? More material enjoyment. Private airplane, private island, private this, more this, more this. More. You never become satisfied. You never become satisfied. And even, and you can't get that position. And if you somehow become the emperor of the world, it's still duality because you're threatened with non-existence. Because that conception of emperor is not you. It's the combination of matter you've attracted by your own consciousness and previous deeds. So it's not really you. And therefore, it's not satisfying. It doesn't really satisfy you. And it's not eternal. What is that? Nasate vidyate bhavo. The bhavo vidyate. That which is eternal is permanent. That which is nasate vidyate bhavo. That nasate. Anyway, I get that. But anyway, and then what do? They begin praising one another. Because in that consciousness, that pure consciousness of seeing God, and you see the sun, you see yourself, and you're the servant of God. It's just like Ram. Ram is the servant of God. He doesn't want to become, if liberation means impersonal, that I merge, then I don't want to be liberated. I'm completely satisfied. I'm sitting at the feet of Krishna. I'm sitting at the feet of Guru. I'm completely satisfied. And you're in that consciousness. And then because bhakti is so powerful in the heart and it's a desire, whenever you have a desire, it creates a sense that I lack that. There's a sense that I don't have this. So therefore, as you get more and more prema, you actually feel you have less and less of it. It's like a hunger. I have less food. So this hunger for God, I want God, I want God, I want Krishna, it creates a humility. But it creates a satisfaction because you have the one thing that's not dependent on your position or power, and that's love. And that's what you value, and that's what you're feeling. You feel loved. You don't feel great, you feel loved, and feeling loved, you feel satisfied. And in that consciousness, you begin to look through that lens of seeing everyone serving Krishna. Even the grass, you see the grass as epitome of humility. The tree is the epitome of tolerance. The grass is teaching humility. The tree is teaching you start seeing everyone as guru. And what to speak there with other great Vaishnavas. And the nature of bhav is it has to be expressed. You can't like sit in an ecstatic kirtan with your eyes closed like a yogi. You have to dance. Emotion has to be expressed. And the best way to express emotion of love is praise and glorification. So automatically, they start praising other devotees. But when you're like this and feeling this, and someone's saying, you're great, you're great, you're great, you're great, you don't want that because it's antithetical to the bhav of humility, love, and mercy you're feeling. So because like this, and they're glorifying each other. And Narada Muni happens to be one of those sages. And they're glorifying each other in this very high, pure Vaishnav community that's mat chitta, matkata, prana, bodhiyantas, parasparam, the same word, enlightening and exchanging with others. And we talk much about community, how we have that sense of unification without losing your identity. You can transcend the limited concept of I. The limited concept of I. That I am the center, I am the controller, I am the enjoyer. And you start to feel like a commonality and a confidence. And that commonality and confidence, it begins to melt the protective false ego that I want to enjoy, I want to control. And as that becomes removed from the consciousness, then you're able to experience the energy of God and the deity, the energy of God in the holy name, the energy of God in other devotees, the energy of God in prasadam, the energy of God in the Shastra. More and more and more. So this is what's happening. And then Narada sees something, and Marge Prickett's going to explain that. Matas tadanim tatraiva vipra varya samagata dashashmeda dashashvam me dike tīrtha bhagavat bhakti tatpara. Dear mother, at that time, a first-class Brahmin, this is at Kumbh Mela, arrived at the holy state called Dashvameda Tirtha. He was tatpara, fully fixed, absorbed in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So Narada Muni then observed this devotee. Sevato shesha sampadis tat yadikaravan prita parijanai vipra bhojanartam kritodhyama. Actually endowed with all assets, he was the spiritual leader of that region. His retinue surrounded him as he prepared to distribute food to the local Brahmins. So he was the Acharya. He was the leader, Adhikara Van Tat Deshasya, of that region. He possessed Adhikar. He possessed spiritual authority, and he's surrounded by his subordinates. But even though he's surrounded by his subordinates, he's not the leader to control and enjoy, but as a service, he takes that position. He never deviates. Not that I'm guru, but as a service to my guru. But as a service to my guru, as a service to my guru, I will take a position of authority to represent him, to help others, like a parent. A parent, it's not like I'm the parent to control and enjoy. No, I'm the parent to have progeny and to serve God by training them in God consciousness. So he has that mood. And he prepares to distribute food, to give charity. Although it says he has Sevata, Ashesha, Sampadi, he has all Sampa. Sampa means wealth, assets. But what is he doing? He's served by assets, and with those assets, he's serving the Brahmins. Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagat Hitaya Krishnaya. He's serving the Brahmins, he's serving the cows. Because in that type of culture, the Kshatriya's own land, they may exact taxes. The Vaishyas are productive. The Vaishyas, it's a 10% principle. The 10% principle that in any field, there's generally about 10% people that have talent. So there's people who are talented in making money. And generally the Vaishya class will produce 90% of the wealth. And they have great responsibility to give charity. And they give charity to the Brahmins, and they make sure that the working class have all their needs that are met. Or the king extracts taxes and does that. So this was the system. And it was very carefully designed so that the working class never becomes dissatisfied. Because by guna and karma, people who are Vaishyas, they'll have an emotional attachment to money. And that drives them, that's their mode. They can be purified by karma yoga. Then you give the results to Krishna, and then you start to see things as Krishna. But in that purificatory modes of nature, the Vaishyas have this emotional attachment to money, and therefore they see how to make it. If you ever met a real Vaishya, he can go any place and see money. I remember I had one godbrother, he was expert. He saw money everywhere, and he was running a temple in Calcutta. And then they got donated this big, huge house. And people suggested so many things, and he turned it into a wedding hall and made so much money for Krishna. He's making so much money that in Mayapur, they asked him, why don't you pay for the samadhi, a Prabhupada samadhi, because they couldn't figure out how financially to do it. He said, no, Don't pay for it. I'll take care of the whole thing. And then he went into that samadhi and he charged 1 rupee for Ganga Darshan and started selling prasad. And it became a gold mine and they wanted it back. The point is, without making any judgment, they know how to make money. They know how to create wealth. But it was controlled by the king because no one could go hungry. Everyone had to have their needs met. And the Brahmins were detached, but they would live on charity. And sometimes out of reciprocation, the Vaishyas would give donations. So this Brahmin, he had Sevita Ashesha, he had all assets. He had all assets. But what is he doing? He's also giving charity. Vichitrot Krishna Vastuni Sanishpadya Mahamana Avashyakam Samapyadau Samskritya Mahitim Stalim. Having collected all sorts of valuable items for the worship of the Lord, the generous Brahmin then saw to the preliminaries, first by purifying a large area on the ground. So an environment has a tremendous effect on consciousness. And when you worship the Lord, you have this body, and this body has an ahankara, a particular identity, and the intelligence of that body has been geared and trained by karma to serve that body. And what it does, it uses the mind to take in impressions and identify them as good or bad based on the body. And that's what we're suffering from. So before you worship, you have to make a conscious effort. It's called Bhuta Shuddhi. Bhuta, the body, Shuddhi, to purify it, and somehow embrace some kind of spiritual conception. So it's hard just to go into worship. There should be an asana, there should be akshman, there should be preparation, there should be, even in japa, there should be some prayer, some intention. I think one of the most important things in japa is having a prayer. Just like when you get second initiation, you get the Gopal mantra. And basically it said one should chant that with a conception of Krishna and a desire to awaken your relationship with Krishna. This is called mantra upasana. You meditate on a mantra. And then it said, people who can have a picture of Krishna in their mind and meditate on Krishna, they become successful on that. It describes sometimes there's a flowing river, and on the side of the river, there's water that's not, that you can enter without being washed away. So you can enter into that water, but gradually you'll start to feel the flow. So it's said like that people who can meditate on an image of Krishna, there's different verses like Bahar Bidam, Natavara Karnio, Karnikar, Yam, Bibrad, Vishad, Kanika Kapisam, the image and picture of Krishna. Then as you become purified in heart, it begins to move. That's called Swadasiki. Then the meditation becomes more like a movie. But first you have to have, and what is our Bhuta Shuddhi? Before worship, we should worship Guru. And develop that identity. I'm the servant of Guru and Krishna. Or Nahamvi Prachanara Patir Vaishno Nasuja. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not that. Gopi Bharta Padakamalor Dasa Dasa Anudasa. I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis. But anyway, he's preparing the ground. He's creating the atmosphere because the main thing is the consciousness. and environment has such an effect on consciousness that he's preparing the ground. And Narada is watching this. Savaram chatvaram tatra, madhye nirmaya sundaram, upalipya swahastena, vitanan yudatanaya. There he swiftly built a handsome altar, which he smeared with mud with his own hands and covered with a canopy. So you can see him, he's making the altar. And the first class deity worship, one even grows his own food, and he gets all the way down to the basics. He grows his own food and then harvests that. I love when I'm out in Govardhan, and Bhaktivedanta Swami has a disciple who's building this incredible project there. I was one of the first people when they did the ceremony for the land, and we planted 6,000 trees. And it's on part of land. The 6,000 trees create this forest. And there's this wonderful lady, devotee named Anupayani, who, for her guru, went to school and learned landscape design, and then got a degree in that, and then went to Bṛhad and studied all the plants. So she has this thick forest growing. And I say, why is it so close together? And she describes, that's how a forest grows. There's a competition between them, and some of them die off and some of them become strong. So there's this deep, thick forest. And within that forest, there's 6 mud kutīrs. Beautiful, though, representing the 6 Goswamis. And each kutīr has the flowers that are the color of this that represent that 6 Goswami. I think Rupa Goswami is red and this one is white. And so they have the different flowers. And then that encircles Radha and Shamakund, which is fed by a natural water of the property that slopes down. Then they have a beautiful, really first-class 70-room guest house, and they're building a temple. The idea is those will be the classrooms for training in Krishna consciousness. But as it's 6 acres, they have about 1.5 acres of land, and they grow organic food. And I have some relationship with them, and they bring me the vegetables. It's a whole different level when you could worship that level of purity for the pleasure of Krishna. So, and the thing about this Brahmin, this opulence can become so distracting because you become connected to it in relationship to the false ego. We have that tendency. But he was fully surrendered, and everything he had was only used for Krishna's service. And he satisfied the Lord and everyone else. Salagram Shila Rupam Krishnam Swanarsane Subhe Nirvesha Bhaktya Sampuja Yatavedi mudāviṣṭā. Next, he placed Lord Krishna's form as a Shalagram Shila on an auspicious golden throne. So he kind of met, and he took out a golden throne, purified the land, and worshiped the Lord with great devotion. Joyfully, he performed the prescribed rituals. So he was nirvesha, seated, bhaktya, with devotion, and in sampuja, yatavidi, followed the rules, but mudāviṣṭā. Wow. Thank you, Jamuna Jaya. I'm just so absorbed today, I didn't even realize how much time had gone by. Anyway, this is beautiful, and we'll continue this story. Jumunajai, did we get you before you go? Or you have to start your yoga class. I guess she's gone already. Okay. Gail, you have any question?
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. I think I'm good. I still, just confirming once again.
Wait, say again. Start again. I lost you. Go ahead.
I'm pretty good today. I just want to confirm that you said last time that this essence of the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, is synonymous with the devotional Mahabharata that Janamejaya heard from.
That's what's said. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Still trying to keep that straight.
But
because I think what's throwing me off is, the difference in the titles of the books. That is Mahabharata, but it's called Bhagavatāmṛta.
Well, no, it's the Mahabharata, and then he wanted the essence of the Mahabharata. In other words, it was the Mahabharata which was more relishable. Then he wanted Madhuram Samapiyate. He wanted the sweetness of that. And that's the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta is the Kila. So it's not that the Mahabharata was the Bhagavatam, but it was more akin to it with Ete Chamsa Kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. It was more akin to that. So, and then there was a synopsis of it, and the synopsis of that Mahabharata was the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta. And the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta was Bhakti, what is it? Was Bhakti, Bhagavad Bhakti Shastranam, Ayam Sarasa Sangraha. It was the collection of the essence of Bhagavad Bhakti. And even in the Bhagavatam, he wants to really explain the love of the gopis. The purpose of the Bhagavatam is to purify your heart so that you can hear Krishna's pastimes and develop a strong desire to develop that love. And therefore hear about that. And when you hear about that, aspire for that in such a way that it changes your whole internal body. So that no longer are you from New York, no longer you have this ethnicity, no longer you identify with this or whatever it is, or gender or whatever. You don't identify with those things. You begin to completely, and then at the level of prema, you actually get that spiritual body. Because there's Vastu City and there's I've got two perfections, but one is Vastu, it's actually the substance. And another city is the mental conception of it. City means perfection. Okay, Gail?
Yeah, so Uttara heard Bhagavatam from her son, Parikshit.
She heard the Bhagavatāmṛta. That's what she heard.
But so did Janamejaya, no?
Yes.
But they heard it at different times, or?
They heard it at different times, and you have to understand that when they say Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, it's just like the Bhagavatam. You give a Bhagavatam class, you may use contemporary examples that are not in the Bhagavatam, but it's still the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is that message, and it can be reshaped. It was in 4 verses, then it was expanded to 18,000 verses. So it's not exactly has to be literal, the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else like to say hello, ask a question, a reflection?
Yudhisthira Maharaj.
Great to see you.
Pardon me?
Great to see you.
Nice to see you and hear. Two quick things, may take longer for you to comment on, but one of them is what you just said about Bhagavatam. I was reading, and you could clarify, there was a quote, something from Srila Prabhupada that basically broadened that even more, that all spiritual knowledge is Bhagavatam.
Well, not well.
All knowledge that's leading us towards the divine.
Well, there's Veda. What Prabhupada said is Veda means knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like there's a Hindu knowledge or a Vaishnava knowledge. There's knowledge. And it's reflected in many, many traditions. But not all the knowledge is the direct glorification of Krishna. There's Ayurveda. How do you keep the body fit in society, which can be used for Krishna's service? There's Dhanurveda, how you can keep, how you fight. There's so many things. But the Bhagavad
Prabhupada was speaking about the spiritual purport of that word in that reference. I mean, I'd have to look it up. It was a quote from either a letter or something that really broadened it.
I think when you get letters and things, you have to see the context but in terms of the tattva, what the Bhagavatam is when the Vedas, which is knowledge, when it wasn't expressed directly about Krishna, that was Vyasadev's dissatisfaction. So it wasn't. So when you have the sufficient glorification of Krishna, that's the Bhagavatam. And the whole Vedas is meant for that. Vedaischa sarveham eva vedyo vedanta vid veda vid. Of all the Vedas, I am to be known.
Yeah. No, I understand. I'll look it up maybe and send it to you if I can.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's
because
great.
It was an interesting thing. The second thing is, it's just a reflection I've been having lately on the sense of touch, because you were speaking about peeling off layers, including the ego, and being so helpful. And the sense of touch we don't think about, at least I hadn't so much, but it connects us to the physical world in such a inconceivable way. And, we think of the sense of smell and the sense of taste and visual and how to engage those in Krishna's service and the service to Guru and Krishna. But often the sense of touch and how not to get lured into the bodily concept too much, maybe you could comment on that and I'll be quiet.
No, that's nice. Well, Anamoya is the first conception, and our first relationship with the world as dependents. We become dependent on food. So that's also touching something. Taste is also touching something. It's when you have to become liberated the indirect yogic way, you have to go through all the different layers of the universe: earth, water, fire, air, ether. I'm not sure which one is. Earth is fragrance, fire is sight. Air. Air means touch. Air has the quality you can feel. Ether you can only hear. And earth, water, fire, you add the element of sight. Water, you add the element of taste to all those, and earth is complete. Earth is the grossest manifestation, and it also has all 5 of the elements. But of course, it gets more and more subtle, and that's subtle, but that's a connection with the world. The feeling, the touch, Okay, I'll think more about it, but it's great to see you. We'll speak on, I think it's Monday. Looking forward to speaking to you. Okay, Haribol. Anybody else like to say hello today?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. This is Anupam Das.
Oh, great, Anupam. Thanks. I was wondering who those beautiful Gorni Thai deities are. Thank you, Anupam. Any reflections?
I had a couple, yeah, that it was a really nice class. It's nice to hear the essence of the essence of the essence, and got right to the point. We have a home program on Friday, and this past week, one of the people who attends, like for the past couple of years, she said she was starting to feel like the Bhagavad Gita was redundant. That because we've been doing it for about 3 years now, and we're still on the 4th chapter because we do about a verse a week, and she was starting to feel like, oh, it's redundant, and I told her, well, you do in some ways perhaps have a point there, in the sense that the Bhagavad Gita isn't necessarily geared towards people who already understand the essence. It's meant to kind of bring people to that point of realization that actually, despite all the karma yoga, the jnana yoga, all the options you have, the real thing is bhakti. And so if you're still stuck in the 4th chapter after a few years and you already know the key to it, then it could feel a little bit redundant, I suppose. But so I was just reflecting that it's so nice to hear this, to hear something get straight to the point like that. And obviously for somebody who is advanced, they see the essence being spoken of throughout the Gita and throughout whatever Krishna teaches or his pure devotees. But in any case, my biggest reflection was the point you made about how mercy comes from humility, and humility comes from prayer. And it's just nice to have that step-by-step guide towards making advancement. Because I had just written down this point in the CC last week where Prabhupada made this point in the purport that that actually the only way to become completely free from material desires, to become pure, is through mercy. And so, we may be doing so many spiritual practices, but if we're not doing them in the right mood, with the right humility, then ultimately we'll become stagnant in our advancement. And so I was just thinking how important this is, this idea of the mood and the humility. And I've been having a talk with my friend Bhakta Evan, who I think you met in Govardhan at one point.
He also came to our program in New Jersey, actually, with Jai Jagannath. But yeah, I know him.
Right. So yeah, he's very big into prayer. Him and Jai Jagannath too. That's kind of their fixation right now, is prayer. And I felt a reconnection with it as of late too. And after a few years of really not putting so much thought into it. But if you could expand more about prayer and how to pray, and just a little bit.
Yeah, I guess that's a long thing, but I got the inspiration from the first verses of the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, where in one of the purports, it says the 3rd verse, it says, this was so high, how can he possibly explain it? And then the 3rd verse was praying to Lord Chaitanya and explained that by prayer, it explains that by prayer comes mercy. So I think this is part of the preparation for devotion. Everything has to be begun with prayer. Another person who's really deeply into prayer, do you know Krishna?
Yeah, I remember meeting him at your Puri retreat.
Yeah, he studied this thing called a passage meditation. It was before he was a devotee. And it was by some kind of Brahminical person, but it was, I don't think he had the ultimate conception of personalism, but his conception of prayer was very, very deep. Prayer embodies, I just see, I left this out of my Monday morning greetings. It's another realization, but what prayer does, it embodies the consciousness of the person who offers the prayer. So if you do a prayer in a humble way, it's just the nature of poetics that mood would come to you. So there's many reasons, but if you get my Monday morning greetings, I gave the other 4 reasons, but this is the reason I left out. I forgot. And in terms of her being, I like that you acknowledged, and then you should consider when you do one verse over 4 years, it is repeating. And the reason it's repeating is because Arjuna didn't understand the point. And therefore, the dialectic between the teacher and the student is, when the student asks questions, the teacher sees what in the student's understanding is lacking. Because the teacher spoke the truth, Krishna spoke the truth, but Arjuna didn't hear the truth, so he raised his doubts. And it had to go back and forth until finally, I think the 5th or 6th chapter, he understands. And when I was taking the course with Borijan, in the 2nd chapter, it was very, very complex. And someone said, I don't understand. And Borijan's answer was, that's okay. Arjuna hasn't understood yet either. So it takes some time to understand those points. But maybe reflect, maybe, you should, I don't know how to do it, because it'd be nice to get like the Bhagavatam, the 1st canto. Okay, Anupam, thanks for your reflection. I appreciate it a lot. Okay. Anybody else like to say hello?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Tota Gopinath here.
And Kishore Radha.
Okay, see you guys soon somewhere.
All righty. Haribo.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the class. This is Krishnamrita. Among other things, I liked very much your explanation that when we are satisfied in our heart, we don't need anymore to enjoy and control. And it's so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishnamrita. Haribo. Anybody else say hello?
Hare Krishna Gurudev, Yavat Sundari here. Thank you very much for the class.
Sundari, Haribo. Great. Yeah. Siddheshri told me that the reception in your country now is really poor. She couldn't even talk to her daughter for a month. But anyway,
Yes.
Anybody else?
It is. But we are lucky we can still join to your class, Maharaj.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for class.
Isabel, Hare Krishna. Good to see you.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Haribo. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Namaste here.
Okay.
Thank you for the class. Haribo.
Nice to hear from you. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Samantha. First
Samantha,
time.
Well,
Hi.
welcome for joining our Sanga.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful.
Okay, great. You'll enjoy this because you're a professor of classics. And this is the ultimate classic in Krishna consciousness. I remember there's this one lady who was a professor, and when she read this, the story and how the philosophy was presented, it gets exciting. Well, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hey, Krishna Garage, it's all Govinda. Thank you for class.
You guys really want to see that that film, huh? It's great.
Yeah, sounds great.
I finally understood hardcore. I mean, when they compared it, when the scenes go from the hardcore to the Raghunath chant, it's the same Raghunath.
Yeah.
It's the same passion, chanting Hare Krishna with wild Indians. I thought, wait, this is exactly the same thing.
Well, then you have like Sadhu Sanga when you have Chatmarama, stage diving during the kirtan or something like that.
It was just that the idea that they were trying to give a message in the language that these crazy kids understood.
Mm.
So it was the same concept. I'm trying to enlighten people. But when I saw the crazy Indians dancing with Raghunath, and then they go off to him on stage with Parmananda, I just thought it's so similar. Okay, anybody else?
Well,
Thank you.
Nina, nice to see you. When are you coming to India?
I hope so, in autumn.
Okay, you're not sure yet. Tickets are so expensive from Russia now.
We get used to this.
Okay. Oh, you're in your office?
No, I'm in the temple.
Okay, Haribo, nice, thank you for coming on. Okay, anybody else? Say hello.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this is Sri Gandharvik.
Oh, great, great. I'm so happy. You can't always hear it live, right? Because of your work, right?
Yes, true. So
Okay,
I'm
I
very
was
happy
like,
when
'cause
I
I
can.
look at the names and I saw your name there. I was happy to see your name there. Okay,
Yes, I'm happy to be on live.
okay, Haribo. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. Hare Krishna.
Amala.
This is
Hare
Amala.
Krishna.
Hare
What
Krishna.
happened?
Thank
You wrote, pray for us, there's war, but now,
Yes, yes, yes. Now it's quiet. Yeah, so quiet.
okay.
Thank you for your
Thank
prayer.
you, Haribo. Anybody else? Okay, we'll thank you all. Meet you again Wednesday and Sunday. I always go back, so if you can't make both things, I kind of put it in context. Okay, Vanchakalpa Tarubhyastaka Sindhu